Hey, what do gamers and musicians have in common? Their fans are super noisy. Hey, shh! Alright, hello, and welcome to Not Another Needless Sequel. I am your once and future host, Kane. So, as this is the first episode, I do want to tell those of you listening kind of what our whole deal is. I have always been passionate about movies my entire life, and one thing that's always come up in my life is I imagine sequels to movies that have no sequels. They're not always good, not always serious. Sometimes they're crazy, sometimes they're ridiculous, sometimes they change the genre completely. We're going to talk about different movies, review the movies, play some games, and ultimately propose a sequel to the films that we watch. And we would like for viewers, or excuse me, listeners, to vote on which sequel idea they think is better, or even propose one that you think beats both of ours. If a sequel is ever correct, this podcast will become the official podcast of that movie. But as of today, I have with me my wife, Kelsey.
I'm Kelsey.
Kelsey will be my co host as we discuss Scott Pilgrim versus the World. From 2010, this film is based on the graphic novel series called Scott Pilgrim. So, first, what would you rate it?
4.6 out of 5.
A 4.6?
Listen, I know you gave it a 5. Get out
It's
of
a
here.
5 out of 5.
No, it's a 4.6. That's above a 90.
Where did it lose points?
Do the math. It's a 92.
Where did it lose points?
I just don't like Scott, honestly. He's kind of a jerk.
Okay.
And it loses a point for that, or 0.1, right?
Okay.
Maybe 0.2.
Okay.
It loses something for a little bit of the cheesiness that goes along with it. Like, I love the cheesiness, but it just had some points. I feel like, if you multiply that out of 100, it's a 92. What'd you give it?
It's a 5 out of 5.
One of the greatest movies of all time.
One of the greatest movies of all time.
Well, your list is askew.
No. Okay. Well, let's talk through the movie. So, the movie starts off, it is introducing the members of the band. They are talking about Scott dating a new girl, Knives.
Yeah.
She's
Knives Chow.
Knives Chow. She's a high school girl. I believe Kim says to him, "What are you now, Scott? Like 28? So you've been out of high school for like 13 years?"
Yeah. Listen, they're making fun of him, but rightfully so. He's 22 dating a not even 18-year-old. It's a little weird.
It's a little weird for sure. I see where they're coming from.
I'm glad that the people in the movie didn't make her younger than that.
In reality, the actress is older by 3 years, or was older. Is always older, I guess, than Michael Cera by 3 years. But, you know.
But for the frame of the story, like, glad she wasn't like, I'm 15. Like.
Yes, which.
Yeah.
I believe that the movie does follow pretty closely along the lines of the comics, which I read most of them a long time ago. I may be forgetting things here and there. Which Knives then shows up to the door. Her introduction is pretty funny as she's meeting everybody. Like, she sits down next to Neil and she's like asking him what he plays for the band, and he's just like, oh, Tetris, Zelda. It's kind of a big question. But then they go into them playing, and that's awesome. The music.
I think it's awesome. My one comment is, did you see how many speakers they had hooked up?
I didn't in
and
particular.
all the amps and stuff. That can't be good for anyone's ears. All right.
Yeah, all of them in that one room.
Yeah.
Did you notice the speakers say lame brand on them?
No.
They do. Yeah. Like where the branding would be on a speaker, it just says lame brand. It is, the music in this movie is so good. It was written by various different people for them. Their playing is actually, they all really learned how to play instruments, like everyone in the band. Michael Cera, I guess, already knew how to play bass, and they told him to dumb it down so he didn't outshine everyone in the band. He had
Oh
to
my
like
gosh. Whoa. Whoa. So edgy.
I thought it was really cool they all actually learned so they weren't just like smacking on their instruments while music played over. Well, Knives absolutely loves them. Then we kind of get a peek into the way Scott's life is. He
Mhm.
is a roommate of Wallace Wells, which that scene's super funny too. Like it's showing all the things in the apartment that Wallace
Yeah.
owns.
I
It's
actually made a note about that too. I was like, Scott's basically just living there.
yeah,
They share Wallace's bed.
yeah.
They share literally everything. The only thing Scott has is his jacket, but Wallace has a nicer
It does
jacket.
say that. Yeah, it says Scott's coat,
Yeah.
Wallace's nicer coat.
So my thought was like, does he not have money? Why doesn't he have money? Like, does he not do anything for a living? Which we do find out later that he's quote unquote in between jobs.
Yeah, and they haven't been getting any gigs. The band,
Yeah.
I mean, they make several references saying that they're not very good, which I think they're awesome. But I like too that when he tells Wallace about Knives, Wallace is like, "I'm not gonna tell anybody," and he texts Scott's sister Stacy, and he's got a flip phone, so you know he is on point with that like T9
That's
texting.
what it was called,
He's
T9
just
texting.
one-handed, like you know me, like boom, just hit that entire
Mm-hmm.
text message.
Yeah.
She calls him, and Anna Kendrick, like she's super funny throughout the entire movie. You see her in a coffee shop most of the time. She was wearing a name badge that actually belonged to the real life inspiration for the character
Oh.
of Stacy, which I'm specifically bringing this up because in I'm not sure if it was an interview or it was something specific for the movie, but Anna Kendrick said somebody should put that trivia on IMDb. And so this is for you, Anna Kendrick, if you want to listen to our podcast specifically. I put this in there for you.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
So Scott then goes to an arcade with Knives. The arcade is obviously like foreshadows things later on, or maybe you could say things later on are just a reference back to the game that they're playing in the arcade, which they are just doing the most on that arcade game.
Yeah, you can tell they're frequent flyers there.
Yeah.
But worst thing about the arcade game is when they finish, he looks at her, looks at the machine, and is like, "You gonna front this? Cause like it's your job to pay. Get out of here."
Yeah. I mean, what is it? A quarter? Well, Canadian money. I'm not sure. Yeah, he's just looking at her like, "Come on." And you know what else is? He lost the game. He's the reason they have to pay again because
Yeah.
he couldn't beat the Nega Ninja.
Yep. Which, you know what, the end of the movie is like this is foreshadowing.
Yes. The arcade, like, that game is, like, sort of set up like Dance Dance Revolution, but, she, like, flips over him, and it's
Yeah.
just. I mean, I've seen, like, expert.
Is it called Fight Fight Revolution?
Was it?
I don't know.
I didn't see if it had a name on
I
there.
just made that up right here on the spot.
No, I didn't see. Which he that sequence is like an entire date with Knives, I guess, or they're spending the day together. I kind of like the way they do it. Like you can hardly tell that they're switching locations. They'll be walking, and they go to this record store. They go to Goodwill. They're outside, but it all just happens, and they continue their conversation. It's not like it's like a very good flow to the scene, I think, of them just continuing.
Yeah, with that, this is where I kind of thought he was actually a little bit of a terrible person.
Yeah.
So he not only was like, "You need to pay for this," I realized, like, what's the name? Clash of the Demon Head?
Yeah.
Because that was like his
Clash
ex.
at Demon Head, yeah.
But he was like, she can't listen to the music. He's like, they're bad, like, don't listen to them. She like turns it back. And then she asks him a question, and he like turns the attention back to him instead of like on other things, and just wants her to be like infatuated with him. And to me, it felt like he was manipulating her, and she was like so innocent that she didn't realize it because she is 5 years younger.
I do think that he has a lot of character flaws, which I think is ultimately the point towards the end that you see that he had to come to terms with a lot of things. But yeah, I mean, he says something to her like, you were saying about me?
Yeah.
And she says, like, you guys rock. And she said, or excuse me, he said, I knew I rocked, but I never suspected we rocked as a unit.
Yeah, and it's just like, shut up, bruh.
Yeah.
So,
You also meet Aubrey Plaza's character during that, Julie, and she's funny the whole movie too. She just looks pissed to be everywhere. I mean, that's kind of something that a lot of her characters are known for, but she like has never met Knives, and Knives is talking to her, and she looks just like,
so annoyed.
yeah, just
Which
completely done.
we find out that Julie dated the like lead singer of the band,
Hmm.
or used to.
Yeah, I mean they kind of have this on and off thing with Steven Stills, the talent.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I noticed when they were walking is they're walking through the snow, and there's an X. There's X's throughout the entire movie,
Yeah.
obviously, but that was the first one I noticed. The snow is melted in a direction, or I guess it's just two separate paths, but they cross as an X. I don't know if I've ever noticed that before. I've seen this movie several times, but this last time, that one in particular, I noticed.
I did not see any X's until later.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
they do come up like almost throughout the entire movie, I believe. When he's out with Knives, he has a. Well, it's not while he's out with Knives, I guess, but the next thing they cut to is he's having a dream about Ramona, which I believe that is another plot point that's kind of just pulled straight from the comic. Is that's his first introduction to her. He just has a dream about her. She says something later on about using
his dream path or
yeah, I don't know if that's a real
something.
thing. I mean, I guess it could be. Like, they do have powers that. I mean, ultimately in the comic, Gideon has some sort of power that works like that, where he can enter that area. But anyway, he dreams about Ramona. Then he sees her, I believe, delivering a package to the library or something.
Yes.
He's out with Knives.
Yeah.
Which, man, you're with your girlfriend, you're staring hardcore at this other girl.
Knives was like, "Do you know that girl?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
See,
that's
character flaw.
so uncomfortable. After that, they end up going to a party at Julie's because Steven Stills is dating her again.
And he sees Ramona there. He's asking about Ramona, and everyone's like, "You have to go ask so and so." And then it just kind of does like a pan to what everybody's saying about Ramona, how she's hardcore, how she's a
Yeah,
badass,
she's
like
American.
she's American. Yeah, all of these things. And so after that, he's like obsessed. He wants to know like who she is. And so next it pans to the house where he's asleep, and Wallace comes in super drunk, and he's like, "That girl Ramona, the girl in my dreams, was there." And he finds out, Wallace knows somehow that she works for Amazon, and Scott needs to order an Amazon package.
Yeah, which I did want to say, when he's at the party, he shows the one guy a picture. He's like, "Do you know a girl with hair like this?" And it's
Yeah.
like the crappiest drawing.
It's like stick figure with Sharpie, no color.
It's just like a scribble of a general shape of her face. Like, I don't know. Yeah, no color. That I guess was originally supposed to be a photo of her in the comic, and then they did that and they thought it was funnier. They also auctioned off one of those for, I can't recall the organization that they donated the money to, but they did like a 10-year anniversary thing, and I think Michael Cera like drew another one of those. It's just, crap, but
That's
it's
funny.
cool to have.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, she works for Amazon in Canada, which is again something straight from the comics. You'd almost think like that was written in for the movie for something modern or something like that. Not that the comic is old, but
Right.
I thought that was funny that he orders that package and is just like, I'm gonna wait. But also, when he orders that package, that's when he gets that email about the evil X's. And
Matthew Patel specifically.
yes, Matthew Patel sends that to him, which he had not even started dating Ramona, so it's like they were like destined to be together because they either that or they're just stalking her so hardcore and they send that email to anyone that like talks to Ramona.
Yeah.
But she shows up, and when she gives him the package, he does his little song and dance. He's like, there are reasons to hang out with me. She doesn't want anything to do with him. She hands him the package finally, and when he throws it behind him and actually makes it into the trash, like, that was real. They had to shoot it like 33 times or something like that to get him to actually make it into the trash. But I thought that was cool. They could have just, easily manipulated that, but they actually had him do it.
That is cool. I like that.
Which I wonder, what did he order that he just threw away? Which in that deleted scene he does say, it's something really cool. You'd be impressed. But
Yeah.
he just didn't even care. Just threw it right away. And he has money for that, but he doesn't have anything inside of Wallace's apartment.
No, literally owns nothing. And also, like, at this point, Wallace and his sister are telling him to break up with Knives, and, like, he refuses.
Yeah, I didn't want to brush past that this whole time he is kind of juggling the two girls, and it is kind of crappy. After that, he goes on his actual first date with Ramona.
Mm-hmm.
They go walking through the snow, kind of talk a little bit about each other's history. They end up back at her house. I liked when she is offering him tea.
Uh-huh.
She's listing out the teas, and one of them's called Liver Disaster.
Yeah, and then she goes to, like, lemon with ginger, lemon without ginger.
Yeah.
Like, it's just very, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead, like, apparently learned that line. Like, they told her, like, we could just give you a piece of paper, I'm assuming in the cabinet or something, that she could just read all the teas. But she was like, no, I'm going to learn all the teas. Like, I want to be able to just say them. And, but yeah, that Liver Disaster one, like, that sounds hardcore.
It does sound hardcore. I also had a flash. You remember when you bought like 9 different kinds of teas at the house, and
Yes.
and you're like, "What kind of tea do you want?" Like, I felt her reading them off in my soul.
Yeah.
And he's like, "There's not just tea. Like,
Yeah.
there's different kinds." Yeah.
She goes to get a blanket because it's cold in Canada, I guess. But he just goes wandering around her house, and like, I get you're cold, but like, this is your first date, and you honestly haven't had too many conversations with this person beforehand.
Doesn't knock entering the bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, she, calls him out, dude, I'm changing. But, like,
Then she was about it.
Yeah, I mean, she was about it. But they end up just kind of ending the date. It cuts to the next morning, and when she skates away, the ice is melting beneath her feet.
Yeah.
Which I don't know what that's about, but I thought that was cool.
Probably the very graphic novel part of the movie. Like,
it could be. There was a lot of stuff they did to try and tie it back to that. One of the things that I read about them is they told the actors to try not to blink too much because it's more like a comic. And there's only a few blinks in the movie. You wouldn't really, like, pay attention to that. But,
I did not.
Alison Pill's character, Kim, for example, like, she blinks, I think, exactly once in the movie. Which, she has a lot of scenes where they just want her staring, like, angrily.
Yeah.
She's great. So, after that first date with Ramona, he invites Ramona to the first battle at the Rocket.
Mm-hmm.
Knives is also there. Very awkward, terrible situation that, he kind of put himself in. Luckily for him, I guess, Knives passes out, which actually I do want to say Knives was wearing a Sex Bomb t-shirt, and it was crap. Like, it looked like it had sticky notes on it, but Ellen Wong actually made that herself, and she made 2 of them, and like, they picked that one in particular for her to wear for the movie. So I thought that was cool. I mean, it was supposed to look that way, but I swear it had sticky notes on the back of it, just stuck.
That is cool. And to get out of the situation with Ramona, he just awkwardly, like, laughs and runs away, like, Scream Scary Movie style.
I believe when he notices them talking up on stage, that's when he's like, we need to play now and loud. Like,
and then, we are Sex Bomb!
Yeah,
and then they start.
They play.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Luckily, she passes out, which, I mean, that song is great. I already said it at the beginning. Like, I just love all the music in this. But Matthew Patel comes flying through. He's the first X for him to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like that they didn't try and do some kind of explanation for it. Like he just starts fighting. Like
Yeah, I said he's literally whooping his ass though, and then
yeah.
Matthew Patel just continues to be just fine.
Yeah. Well, I kind of like the way they do some of the fights where they do a little fight before like an actual like versus screen pops up. It
Hmm.
reminds me of like kind of the last Mortal Kombat game that came out. Like you do a cutscene, you see people fighting, they're having a full blown fight, but then they kind of stop, step away, talk some shit to each other, and then it says like versus, and then it's your turn. Like you take over from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he fights Matthew Patel. He's got mystic powers. He summons his demon hipster chicks. They did the scene in the style of like a Bollywood movie on purpose for that. I thought that the fight's super cool. I mean, I could see where maybe parts of that you might have called out as cheesy, but I think it all just flows very well with it. After that,
They're on the bus because he beats Matthew Patel.
yes, he's on the bus with Ramona, and she's explaining the seven evil X's thing,
Hmm.
which, everybody's got X's, but you'd think that'd be like, well, why are they wanting to fight? Why is this that serious of a thing? Which, um, Matthew Patel, like, he's crying over a girl he dated in seventh grade, and she mentions they dated for a week and a half. A week and a half in seventh grade, and he's holding on to it.
Do you remember your girlfriend from 7th grade?
No. Do you?
I didn't date in middle school.
I'm just saying, even if I do remember them, even if I still knew them,
Interesting.
there wouldn't be anything.
Interesting.
I actually forgot to mention something that I wanted to point out. Matthew Patel, like when he shoots those fireballs at Scott, he kills some people in the back. You see them turn to skeletons. Like he straight up murdered people. Granted, Scott murdered him. I'm pretty sure that when he's punching these people into coins, they're dead, right?
They would
Like
have to be, for sure.
what?
110.
I mean, what else?
It's given him coins to pay for the video game at the arcade.
No, remember he picked up the coins and he was like, "It's not even enough for bus fare."
I mean, yeah, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah, I mean, at least the first X that he fights. After that, Scott finally goes to break up with Knives, and that's super depressing. I mean, I guess it's good he finally did it, but
he only did it because Wallace forced him to.
that's true. Wallace threatened him. That's the only reason. So Ramona comes over for that like follow-up date at the house, and that scene's always made me laugh when they're eating the garlic bread, and he's like, I could just eat it forever and ever. And she's like, yeah, but you'd get fat. And he's like, why would I get fat? Bread makes you fat. Bread makes you fat?
Yeah, that is good. I like when he sings to her, Ramona, Ramona. Like those are the only. She's like, can't wait to hear the rest of it.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, like that was the only
Yeah,
thing
that
he
was
wrote.
it. In that 10-year anniversary script like read they did, Michael Cera like played the song and like sang it again. But also she mentioned she dyes her hair like during that date when she comes over. She has different hair color. She mentioned she dyes her hair a different color every week and a half,
Mhm.
which God, her hair's got to be dead.
Yeah, for sure.
But every time they do a flashback, it's not often, but when they do flashbacks, her hair matches whatever her current hair is. And so I wonder if she's just cycling through these same like three colors. I mean, but either way, her hair's gonna fall out.
Well, her outfits always match her hair color too. Like
Her nails as well.
When her hair is green, her undershirt under the black is green.
And her purse that has the star on it, the star is a different color too.
Yeah.
So when they're at the house, like she mentions something about his hair. He gets super uncomfortable, puts on a hat. He's like, all right, we should go out. And they go to the movie set where Lucas Lee is filming his movie. Wallace also went there. He mentioned like how big of a fan he was.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Evans as Lucas Lee is fantastic.
Yeah.
As of now, obviously, I envision him as Captain America. And even though he's not like this, when I envision Captain America, I imagine the way Loki made fun of Captain America in the second Thor movie. You remember he turns into him and he's like, it's so righteous. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's how I imagine him. And so to see him in this movie, he's like, I let him do the wide shots when I'm getting blazed in my Winnie. Like, it's hilarious.
It
And
was very Human Torch.
yeah, I mean, at the time, like, I think he was more well known for that. I don't believe he had done any Captain America just yet. In 2010.
I don't think Captain America had come out yet. No.
Yeah. So, he like I love him in that movie. He's definitely a highlight. I did laugh when he walks up to Scott. He asks for the autograph, and like Lucas Lee punches him, and he's like, he just comes back from the punch. Is like, can I have that autograph? Um,
Yeah, when he finally beats him, he's like, "Dang it, I forgot to get his autograph."
yeah. It seems Lucas Lee's like power is the stunt doubles. Those stunt doubles were actually Chris Evans stunt doubles for like movies. I mean, I
That's a
can't.
lot of stunt doubles.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for if they're still his stunt doubles, but those were his actual stunt doubles. But yeah, those dudes, I laughed too because I'm not sure if they actually sounded that much like him. They just all did that voice, or they just did the voiceover of Chris Evans. But he asked them as he's walking away, he's like, "You guys want a coffee?" And they're like, "Nah, I'm good." Like,
Yeah.
negative. But yeah, he beats him. He doesn't really beat him. I noticed actually. We'll get into the other people, but Matthew Patel's the only person that he beats solo. For this guy, Lucas Lee, he just goads him into doing this trick that kills him. He just explodes at the bottom.
He did beat the stunt doubles though.
He did. You're right. He did beat the stunt doubles. So after the battle with Lucas Lee, he goes. I think the next scene or one of the next scenes, he's like at home because Ramona just kind of disappeared from the set after that, and he wakes up in bed and there's three other people in the bed. It's him, Wallace, and then I believe Wallace's boyfriend, and then Stacy's boyfriend that he had like hit
Yeah.
on during the Matthew Patel fight. But this bad boy looks like a twin bed on the floor, and there's four of them sleeping in
Yeah.
it. I think that's hilarious. But then also Knives comes to the door, and that's one of my favorite scenes. Like, he opens the door, you can very clearly see Scott, and Knives is like, "Is Scott here?" And he's like, and then Scott, boom, crashes through the window, just
He just
jumps
left.
through. Yeah, he just left, and he reaches back in for his coat, and
And she's
like,
like looking.
she just goes, "Oh, okay." I mean, she comes back throughout the movie a lot, but it's just sad because she really seemed to like him and the band. Like, she just was a nice girl. And I mean, I guess it comes back to what you said about Scott not being a great person.
Yeah, she kind of goes a little bit crazy and decides that she's going to try and get Scott back by changing her hair and flirting with young Neil.
Yeah, she texts young Neil. It's like all
You're so
dumb
cute.
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she says you're so hot. It's got like 3 T's on it.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Don't lie. You probably texted a girl like that back in the day.
I never texted. I was a T9 master, but I never texted like that.
Mm.
Even to this day, like, when people text me, and I'm sorry to be a hater here, but when people text me, like, I mean, I'm okay with some things like LOL, but when people say, like, NP for no problem, I'm like, just type out no problem.
That's because we're boomers. Because I'm like,
I'm
somebody will
not.
be like, WBU. Like, what about you? What do you mean? Like,
Just type it out.
I have
What
to
are you
ask.
doing?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, in this day and age when the phones are as big as they are and you can type, like,
Mhm.
I'm just like, what do you do? I feel that a lot of those acronyms were designed for when it was like the T9 texting.
Yeah, back in my day,
Oh
we
my
had
God.
to have T9 texting. We had phones before the iPhone came out.
I do not believe that even the younger generation is texting with those acronyms. I don't believe it.
I mean, I don't either, but what I'm saying is that's why we're boomers.
I mean, I can ask my younger siblings and find out.
Nah.
If there's any younger people listening to this podcast, don't contact us about it. I don't talk to kids without their parents around.
Yeah. You can just comment or, tweet about it.
Just tweet about it.
Just tweet about it.
So after that, they go to Lee's palace, and Envy Adams is there, and they open up for her band, the Clashette.
Nobody claps. It was terrible.
Yeah, he says like we have merch in the back, and like nobody says anything.
They
Like,
go to the bar and they ask Ramona if they were good, and she was like,
he says, "Did we suck?" And she's like, "I don't know. Did you?"
"Yeah, exactly." And it's like, "Oh yeah, we did."
Yeah, she didn't say anything. Um, so then Envy Adams invites them to the back. They all go back there, which it's such an awkward, uncomfortable scene. And again, sad for Knives because she is just excited to be there. She really loves this band and she's happy to be back there. She's trying to ask questions
Mm-hmm.
and, be a fan. Meanwhile, the rest of them are doing this staring contest.
That was because Scott and Ramona realized that Scott's ex Envy left him for one of the evil exes.
Yeah, that is kind of a weird. Again, I mentioned it earlier, but it's like they were destined to meet and all this happen.
For sure.
Which terrible thing that Scott, or not Scott, Todd smacks the blue out of Knives' hair. And I thought it was so funny that Neil gets all dramatic. He's like, he smacked the highlights out of her hair.
Yeah.
He smacked the highlights out of her hair.
Yeah. Neil was just glad. Young Neil was just glad to be getting some attention from the ladies.
Yeah, they do kind of play him off as like this side character, which he's great. He's there supporting them. He's like standing by the amp, snapping and stuff, singing along. Yeah. But anyway, Scott's had enough and he fights.
Yeah, which is crazy because Envy is okay with Scott fighting Todd because she's jealous of Scott and Ramona.
Mm-hmm.
So being like, she's also evil in her own right because she doesn't want to be with Todd, but she doesn't want to be with Scott, but she also doesn't want him to move on and be happy.
Yeah, I mean, Envy does seem like kind of, I believe, honestly, in the comic.
Envious.
Envious. I believe in the comics that Envy does have a little bit bigger of a role overall, but I don't fully recall. It's hilarious to me that his power is being vegan.
His power of being vegan is amazing, is what I wrote.
And they're questioning it, and they're like, Envy says something like, being vegan just means you're better than most people.
Yeah.
And you know what else is? I think I saw that, I don't know if he always was, but Mark Webber that played Steven Stills, like, he is vegan. And so I thought that was funny as well for him to be a part of all that. Which they funny. Leave when he's fighting Todd.
Like, we're going to go get some pizza.
We're going to go get some pizza. Let us know when you're done.
A pizza place.
Yeah.
Or something.
But again, I mentioned earlier how he doesn't really defeat anyone solo. He doesn't really defeat Todd. He tricks him into drinking this, and the vegan police come and take away his powers.
Yeah. You once were a vegan, but now you will be gone.
And he questions it. He's like, vegan? And he just kicks him. But...
No, he technically defeats Todd. It's just the vegan police take away his vegan superpowers.
I guess.
And then he kicks him in the face and he goes into coins.
I would say he got the help. Which, I mean, man.
I mean, he did it to get the help. He's like, chicken's not vegan?
Well,
like,
yeah,
he
that
wasn't
was his
actually a vegan. Like, it was his third strike.
They say, he's like, gelato's not vegan? They're like, it's milk and eggs, bitch.
Yeah. So, like...
It's so
and then
good.
Envy looks upset that he's not
mad.
actually a vegan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which, that implies that anybody could have vegan powers. It seems they were given to him because they used a de-veganizing ray to take away his powers, which I love. After he's taken out Todd, it shows the vegan police walking away, and they jump and high-five each other. Like, they're doing, like, this very stereotypical, like, CSI opening. I don't know how else to describe, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So after he fights Todd, they go to an after party for that battle.
Yes.
And he finally fights Roxy, which she did come through earlier in the movie, but it's a very quick scene where she's like flying over him, and he says like, I don't have time for this.
He punched her in the tit.
Yeah. She says, you punched me in the boob.
Yeah.
But
and then Ramona actually proceeds to fight her, but she's like, she says, if Gideon can't have you, then nobody can. So it's almost like Gideon has control over all of them and they don't actually still want her, but Gideon wants Ramona.
I will say that, like, I don't know what it is, but when Ramona stops the she has like that whip thing. When Ramona stops Roxy's like whip and pulls out her sledgehammer, I get chills. Like
Yeah.
it's so cool. Like I'm so excited for her to like get in on the fight. She just pulls out that big ass sledgehammer from like her little purse, and I loved that fight of them fighting. And it is funny too when she says like, this is league business. Like he has to fight, and Ramona like gets behind him and grabs his hands and is
And is
like
like fighting
fighting.
for him because he just keeps getting his ass completely beat that night, and he's getting like more and more upset about having to fight the evil exes. But then like somehow Ramona gets like knocked back and Scott has to fight her, and she's about to like curb stomp him to beat him, and she's like, the back of her knee is her weakness, and
Yes.
so he just so slightly like pokes the back of her knee and
Yeah.
she's done and she
That's
explodes.
such a good way for her to go. There's so many good things about that fight. I like when she says, um, which I mean, Scott, kind of gross. He says, "You had a sexy face," and she's like, "I was just a little bi curious." And Roxy says, "I'm a little bi furious."
Yeah.
So good. But also, she says, like it's like in slow motion. She says, right before he touches the back of her knee, "Your BF is about to get effed in the B." Like, I mean, I guess they couldn't say those words. They had to not, go above the rating level.
I finally just put two and two together what that meant. I spent like 15 minutes after that trying to figure it out while we were watching the movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is she talking about? But yeah, I get it.
But yeah, that fight was great. After that, that's when, Scott's kind of a dick. I mean, I guess, I get it, you're getting your ass whooped, but, it was pretty nasty when he said to Ramona, "Is there anybody at this party you haven't slept with?"
Well, that's what I don't understand. She said she had 7 evil exes. He knew he was gonna have to fight and beat them. He's already fought 4 of them. But the part of it that I don't understand is she wasn't okay with giving him a list. And it's like he just wanted to know who he was gonna have to fight, so he didn't just keep getting blindsidedly punched in the face,
Hmm.
which I can also see. Don't get me wrong, like he was an ass, but if she would just give him the list, he would know who he has to take on next. And then she comes back and gives him the list, and it's like, oh, this is all I have left. Like if he had had that from the beginning, he wouldn't be so blindsided all the time.
You're right. And the thing is, though, is like, at least for Roxy, I feel like he should have known. What did he think that was when she was coming at him down that alley in the snow? And he,
And
like,
puffing away
says,
like a dementor.
yes. Well, so her power is, I mean, it's a whole thing in the comic, but she's like part ninja. And so she does like these ninja things. But he says at the bar right before he really fights Roxy, like he's like, "Your 7 evil ex-boyfriends," and she's like, "Exes," and he's like, "Why do you keep saying that, fool? You just saw the girl like
Yeah, I know.
earlier. What do you
It was
mean?"
like that was like the third time he had said ex-boyfriends,
Yeah,
and
and
she
she
had
corrected
corrected
it.
it to exes.
Yeah.
So you knew that there was gonna be at least one girl.
Yes. Um. So after that, they go to the next battle against the twins. And Ramona has, I guess they were not technically broken up, that because she says something a little later, but she was also at that battle. She was in the crowd with Gideon.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that battle as well. I think it was nice that they kind of did a unique thing. He'd already fought people like the past few X's, but this time they did like this monster battle, which in the comics the twins can like summon robots, so they kind of changed that where they're summoning like creatures in this through the music.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a cool way to do it rather than just have him punching them again. But again, I guess I didn't mention it for Roxy. I don't think he fully beat Roxy without Ramona's help. And then for the twins, he didn't beat them without the band's help.
Yeah. That's because he's not confident in himself, which we kind of get to with Gideon
Yes.
later. But I said, the evil X's are the twins, right? And Scott tears him up with a Yeti.
I did think that was cool that they,
I like that it was a
which
Yeti.
his, I also like his eyes like turn green, and the Yeti has like glowing green eyes.
So would you consider that Scott beating him because his guitar is the one that like lights up and projects
I
that?
think he needed everyone. They were all playing, which another X popped up during that scene that I'm remembering now when they first hit them with that first dragon attack. The stage behind them collapses, and there's the like catwalk, I think, that fell behind them, and it made like an X on the stage. But after he defeats them, he goes outside, sees Ramona leaving with Gideon.
Yep, we meet Gideon finally.
Yeah, you finally meet Gideon, which Gideon in the comics, like, he wasn't introduced till like one of the last few comics. So it kind of made sense. They talked about him a lot, but they never really showed you who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And Gideon signs Sex Bomb to his label, I guess, or at least to play at his Chaos Theater.
I mean, the band's kind of crappy for that, though. The lead singer's like, "Oh well," signs it. The drummer gal is like upset at Scott still from dating in high school, signs it, and then young Neil's like, "I'm here for the bassist," signs it.
Yeah.
Like, they a little bit wrong for that.
I mean, I get that. In that scene, Ramona breaks up with Scott, and I'm thinking, like, you were just standing in there, and Gideon was, like, kissing your hand and, like, touching your shoulder. Like, it's a little messed up.
Yeah.
You could always go back to that Scott cheated on you first, but she didn't know that. 2 wrongs don't make a right, that kind of thing. I just was like, you should have already broken up. But also, I guess you could argue that she probably already had the chip in her head.
Yeah.
That comes up later. Also, when they are out there talking to Gideon, he signs them. When Gideon gives them a compliment, Steven, like, pees. Like, it shows that he started peeing.
He did pee his pants.
I thought that was funny.
The G-Man.
The G-Man, yeah. So then Gideon leaves with Ramona, and Scott finally goes to the Chaos Theater to have this face-off with Gideon. Mm-hmm. When he shows up, I think it's funny that the band is playing that song and they're saying, "We're not having no fun." And their amps that they have, I mentioned to you earlier, the amps said lame brand. The amps that they're playing with at the Chaos Theater say sweet brand.
Oh
like, gosh. They're in the money now. They even say a little later on, Kim says, "We are Sex Bomb. We're here to sell out and stuff, or make money and sell out and stuff." Anyway, he fights, and he ultimately loses, which comes back to his character flaws. Like, he got the power of love or whatever.
Yeah, I said it gave him a Fortnite pickaxe looking blade.
Yeah, he needed to fight for something else, and also he still kind of wasn't telling the truth about Knives and Ramona.
Yeah, he wasn't accepting his own flaws, and Gideon was able to destroy the blade of love with his pimp cane.
His pimp cane. Gideon also does, like, a hand motion to summon his blade. I mean, you never seen Naruto, but he does, like, a jitsu kind of hand thing, and one of the last moves he makes, he does, like, an X with his fingers. Another X that popped up. I mean, in that same fight somewhere, when he pushes on his glasses, they have the reflection. It's an X. Super cool. But Gideon kills Scott. Mm-hmm. But luckily,
I put that he cheated and stabbed him in the back when he was talking to Knives, and he def cheated on that one.
He did. You're right. But Scott loses, and luckily he got a life earlier, which seemed like kind of a throwaway gag, but it did come back that he got an extra life, so he was able to come back from... He happened to actually, like, when he died, he was back in that, like, desert plain that he saw Ramona in the first time in his dream.
Yeah.
And she even talks, I think. There's, like, a voiceover of her. But he goes back for his redo.
Yeah, I said that the second round, he realized his wrongs and, like, apologized to Knives, apologized to the band gal, got the band back on his side, apologized to Ramona, and doing all of that not only gives him whatever his new power was, I forget. Self-respect. Like, he finally respected himself, accepted himself for who he was, noticed that he's not cool, he's not perfect, all of this stuff, and Knives helps him defeat Gideon, which throws it back to the arcade at the beginning.
Yes, and I love his one-liners when, Gideon's screaming as he's about to die and he's like, I'm what's hip. I'm blowing up right now. And Scott's like, you're blowing up right now.
Yeah.
So good. I love that shit. Like, I know it seems cheesy, but I just love it. I also like that when he explodes into those coins.
The band.
Yeah, the band, Steven is like, are we still getting paid? And he starts gathering the coins off the floor and putting them in his shirt.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess Scott has to then fight Nega Scott.
Yeah, like it's obviously, a reference to the Nega Ninja. It's like an evil version of him.
Which Scott could never defeat in the arcade in the beginning.
Yes, and he ends up defeating him. It's hilarious. I mean, did he defeat him though? He comes out and they're just talking. He's like talking about French toast.
We'll get to that in my sequel.
Well, I kind of asked that too. I said, where did Nega Scott go? Like he was like, all right, I'll see you,
next
tomorrow.
Next week for brunch.
Yeah, where'd he go? Does he have a house?
I don't know. We don't know where Nega Scott goes.
I don't know.
Guess that's left up to the imagination. But even after all of that, like him and Knives are sitting there chatting and Ramona's like gonna break up with him. In order for him to date her, he had to defeat the 7 evil exes and free her of the curse and the chip. And then she's just gonna break up with him? Like, that's too dramatic, Ramona. Too dramatic.
Well, so they had finished, well, I'm not sure they had finished the movie. They had filmed that final scene originally before Brian O'Malley, the author of the comics, finished the comics. There's 7 comics, I believe. He was on like 5 or something. And the original ending that they filmed for the movie, he ended up with Knives and left. Brian O'Malley said that, he didn't really like that ending because he felt it took away from Knives' character, saying that, she went back with Scott.
Yeah.
And the way he wrote it when he finished the books is that he ended up back with Ramona. And so then they reshot that ending so that they could match that. The books ultimately, the movie ends there. The books ultimately did end, or the comics, they ended as well in the same way. He never did anymore. He said that he didn't feel like Scott Pilgrim needed anymore. And he might revisit it one day if he ever felt like,
After listening to one of our sequel ideas, he probably will revisit it.
Well, it's interesting because Netflix actually announced last year that they were doing an anime series based on it. Now, granted, they could just follow the comics, fit in all the stuff the movie didn't get in because it'd be episodic rather than just this full-length movie.
Yeah, because they're graphic novels, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of got inspiration from a lot of comic books as well as manga, so it kind of fits into an anime. It can be that as well. That's one of the things I think is really interesting about just Scott Pilgrim in general is it goes across a bunch of different media. There's video games, it references the video games, it does stuff like that, anime, comics, now the movie, all of that. So I'm interested to see what they do with the Netflix series, if the Netflix series were to possibly reach the end, if he were to continue. So
I mean, I'm glad that he didn't end up with Knives, because Knives is too good for him. Just saying.
Yeah, I read that they had called Ellen Wong to tell her the change in the ending, and they were worried, she'd be upset, and she wasn't. She was like, I think that's really good. But they preferred that ending, and that's the one they went with, which I think works best.
Yeah.
I want to play a game.
Do I win something if I win?
There's no winner. Really?
Oh, okay.
It's more of a debate type game.
Oh, all right.
Between the two of us.
All right, I'm down.
So, in the comics, Gideon asks Scott to join the Evil X's, the League. It made me think that it'd be interesting if, Scott was not a character and one of the others had to fight everyone else. So I want to kind of put them head to head and see who you think would win. Possibly debate it if we don't have similar opinions. I might just debate it anyway, even if I agree with you. But we'll see. So, first off, let's say Lucas Lee versus Matthew Patel. Now, Matthew Patel's powers are this mystic thing. You see he can fly, he shoots fireballs, he summons his demon hipster chicks. Lucas Lee has the stunt doubles and skating.
I already have my answer.
Okay, who?
Lucas Lee.
Why?
Why? Who do you pick?
Matthew Patel.
You're absolutely crazy. Let me tell you why. Lucas Lee has the stunt doubles. He has himself. He is going to make, what is Matthew Patel's ladies' names?
Demon hipster chicks?
The demon hipster chicks. So wound. They won't even want to fight anymore. They'll be like, ah. And then he won't have his mystical powers, and he'll only have the fireballs, which the stunt doubles, hello, they have to deal with things like that all the time. And then, Lucas Lee just comes out on top on this one.
Okay.
No
Counter
argument.
to that,
I win.
Fireball seems to obliterate anything. So that's
but his stunt doubles have to deal with fire and dodge all of that. So get out of here.
I mean,
nope.
He controls his demon hipster chicks.
Not when Lucas Lee's there to make him swoon. He's a movie
Lucas
star.
Lee's something, but Matthew Patel.
Listen, I've taken my stance. I will not be changing my mind.
He's a pirate.
Pirates are super in these days.
No,
he's an insecure pirate.
Pirates aren't in this season.
Yeah, he's an insecure pirate. All right.
He has fireballs. I can't imagine how you could say he turns people to skeletons.
Then why did Scott beat him?
Scott has plot armor.
No, he doesn't. Get out of here. Don't be like,
Scott won because he has to. Scott cheated. Scott beat Lucas Lee because of the...
But how did he beat Matthew Patel?
So he just beat up Matthew Patel.
Oh, okay, so he had to, in your words, cheat to beat Lucas Lee, but didn't have to cheat to beat Matthew Patel. Your thought process is flawed.
Why wouldn't Matthew Patel just trick Scott or trick Lucas Lee into the same thing?
He wouldn't.
He says, I have these demon hipster chicks, they'd be really impressed if you were to do this trick.
Yeah, he wouldn't.
Yeah, because he just hit him with a fireball.
Because the demon hipster chicks wouldn't do it. They'd be like, oh, swoon.
You know what? We're going to come back to this one.
No, we're not.
Okay, the twins, they summon creatures versus Roxy, the ninja.
Twins.
Why?
Oh, you agree, don't you?
I'm not sure if I agree. Yeah, they can summon a dragon, but she teleports. And, she brought that leg up and just slammed it down on Scott.
She did, but I feel like in that instance, she would be having to fight the dragons and not the twins exactly. And so I feel like whatever the twins summon, now if it was just the twins, I feel like Roxy would win. But they have to summon demons, and that's not one of her powers.
Couldn't she ultimately teleport to them and just take them out?
I feel like that's not the way that it would work. I feel like she would have to fight the dragons. Like I said, if she has to just fight them, I think Roxy would win. But I'm going off the assumption from the movie that I saw, because I haven't read the graphic novel series, anime series.
All right. What about Todd Ingram versus Gideon?
Does Todd have his vegan powers?
Yes.
Is he actually a true vegan?
Let's say that let's say he's a true vegan, but the thing about Gideon is he doesn't really show too much of his powers in the movie, or it's not really explained. I'd like to say that he deserves the benefit of his powers from the comic, which it's kind of hard to explain. He has this thing called the glow, I believe, and he can lock people inside of their own heads, sort of similar to how when Scott died, he was in that desert place. I'd like to think that that's kind of what they were saying there, is that that's what Gideon did to him.
Okay, then Gideon.
Because he would just lock old boy in his head.
And then he'd realize that he wasn't actually a true vegan, lose the vegan powers, and...
But can a vegan have their brain, messed with that way? Vegans are just better than most people.
I mean, yeah. I feel like somehow Gideon would find a way to tell him that he no longer has his, vegan powers.
Okay.
His be gone.
What about Lucas Lee versus the twins?
The twins.
Oh, okay. Well, then what about the twins versus Matthew Patel?
The twins.
You don't think the fireball matters? I feel you're not giving enough credit to this
dragons
fireball.
breathe fire.
Do they? Did they do that? I think they just kind of
These dragons
smashed.
breathe fire.
Okay. Well, the twins versus Gideon?
Gideon.
Do you think Gideon just beats them all?
Yes.
Okay. I
feel like Gideon wouldn't have organized this entire group. It's kind of like Voldemort and the Horcruxes. All of Gideon's, like, all the other 6X's are his Horcruxes.
I mean, Gideon is supposed to be a genius, and it could be argued that, yeah, he could beat them all.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Well, what about your sequel idea? What do you have?
Okay. It's a true sequel. We're going to be 10 years in the future.
Okay.
So they're 22 now, so low 30s.
Okay.
Okay. It's called Scott Pilgrim versus Time.
Mm.
Okay. Ramona, still working for Amazon delivery packages, and Sex Bomb is struggling to make ends meet. So, essentially, they're both at the same place they were 10 years ago, except they, like, live in Ramona's house, right? So, Scott is upset because following the Battle of Gideon, the band had a bit of success, but they've kind of fallen back to right where they've started over the last, however many years. So he is having dreams of traveling on tour with the band because that's what they think is going to, like, bring them the attention. And, like, the band also wants to go, but Ramona is, like, tired of being an Amazon delivery driver and feels as if she's been putting her life on hold to support Scott's unsuccessful dream thus far. Are you here?
Mm-hmm.
So they get into a fight about this, blah, blah, blah. They ultimately, like, take a break, split up.
Mm-hmm.
So in his sleep, Scott has a dream of when he's first meeting Ramona, and he decides he wants to be with her more than the band because if, after all, it's Ramona Flowers. It'll kind of, like, my mind would, like, flash back to, like, the first movie, like, bits and pieces of that. Him first seeing her in the library, all that kind of stuff. At this point, in order to get back to her, he has to fight his own demons over the last 10 years. Like, whatever, his demons are, oh, I'm unsuccessful, like, all of that. He has to fight his own demons, and there's going to be 7 demons, which is an allude to the first movie. Yeah. And the final boss will be Scott.
Okay.
Because he never actually fought and beat him.
Yeah.
Also an allusion to, or allude, is that what it
alludes
is?
To the first movie.
It alludes to the first movie, because they decided they were going to go to brunch, but, like, he never defeated him, never getting that full, like, sense of self.
Yeah.
So anyways, after, like, in between each of these fights, like, I want there to be a flash to Ramona after each one of these fights. And it's going to be her having run into Knives. Insert Knives. Knives is now successful in running, like, a media and management company.
Okay.
Because of how much she, like,
enjoys
loves music and all of that. But, she became very, very successful. And ultimately, Knives offers Ramona a job to work for the company because she can see Ramona's potential and just kind of wants to help her out. So over all of that time, Knives is kind of, like, teaching Ramona how things go. They become, like, pretty close friends, and Ramona is, like, successfully learning the business. So Scott beats all of the demons, is finally able to get back to Ramona, and is able to see and learn, like, how successful she has become. And so before, I feel like Scott would be like, oh, she's so successful, I'm not, like, good enough for her. But now that he's finally beat Scott, or maybe, he finds out how successful she's been, he's like, oh, I can't do it, and then he fights Scott, and then he's like, oh, I can, whatever. So he learns how successful that she's become, and Ramona only did it for him because Knives has decided to try and help out Sex Bomb and book them a tour throughout all of the US and Canada, and Ramona is going to be the project leader and go on tour with them, allowing her to coordinate all of the events. So they get to be together. He gets to live her dream. She now feels like she has a sense of purpose in life.
Okay.
The end.
I like it. I mean, my favorite thing about it is seeing that win for Knives.
Yeah, Knives is like uber successful. Yeah,
I like
and
it.
I didn't want like Scott to get back with Knives, like any of that.
Too much
like,
of a mess there.
And I thought at one point maybe Knives will be with young Neil, but like she just needs to be like, she could have a husband, but she a queen on her own.
Yeah.
Cause she don't deserve Scott, or Scott don't deserve her. I mean, so you know.
Okay.
If you think it would have a better title, I thought about calling it like Scott Pilgrim versus like Past, Present, Future. Like I don't know, I couldn't really think of.
Well, I cheated for my title knowing the titles of the books because each book is called something different. The series is just called Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim versus the World is like the third one, I think. But one of them is called Scott Pilgrim's Finest Hour, and that's what I named my.
Oh.
Which, granted, it could be argued that's a bad title because they covered all the books. Like, technically, the Scott Pilgrim's Finest Hour book is covered in the movie. That was already done. But, so I named mine Scott Pilgrim's Finest Hour. I'm thinking Scott and Ramona, you know, a little bit in the future. They're living their life. Things are going well, but then they are attacked by someone. I don't really want to reveal who that is. Some kind of mystery figure. They barely escape, but they get a message soon after that from, let's say, an Amazon carrier. I just think that'd be funny.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be similar to the email. The message would state something like, Dear Mr. Pilgrim, it has come to my attention that your world could become a potential threat, therefore you will be destroyed. So that's threatening. Ramona asks Scott, you know, what are we going to do? Scott says, we're getting the band back together. And then they do kind of like a montage where they're getting, you know, all the members of Sex Bomb back. Wallace, Stacy, Jules, Knives, Nega Scott, and Envy. Which Envy would obviously be like, that would cause some tension in the movie, but she'd ultimately be on their side. But, you know, that I think could lead to some good moments.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, it would be revealed that they're being attacked by Ramona's evil exes, though they all are going to seem a little different. Something's a little off. They're not quite the same as they were. Obviously, everyone's questioning what happened. You know, we fought them like this should be done. Eventually, we're going to reveal that they're coming from an alternate universe, and that's why they're all a little different. You know, I'm imagining some of their powers are a little different. You could even do something funny where they're just a complete opposite or something. But either way, just a little different. They're all attacking, and they eventually will travel to this universe and realize that this is a universe where Scott joined the evil exes and took over and is now running the league. So he'd be the final boss. They could meet the alternate Ramona, who would be solo, having dealt with these guys, and she could join them. Ultimately, you know, defeat this alternate universe. But I think the title works. The Finest Hour could still work for what's going on. It, like I said, it could just be argued that doesn't make sense when tying it to the books.
I like it. I could call mine like Scott Pilgrim. I don't know. Nega Scott.
Maybe if we knew the name of that game they played, it could be named after whatever that is.
Yeah. I like how we both alluded to like Nega Scott in some.
I mean, I would just have him as helping them.
Yeah, so they stayed friends.
Yeah, you know, that French toast really formed the bonds of their friendship.
They have brunch once a week.
Yeah, all the time.
For sure.
Probably make mention of that.
Well, whose is better?
Not for us to decide.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's our first episode. Thank you for making it this far. We hope you enjoyed, maybe even enough to share our show with someone you know. Leave us a review or simply come back for more next week. If you'd like to vote on whose sequel idea was the best, or if you have a better idea, come by our Twitter at NANSPOD. That's NANSPOD. Be easy, everyone, and we'll see you next week.